They said it's not going to play. Cosmo.
Funeral?
Funerals, okay, that's kind of an obvious one. Yeah. People, so at convocation, people would say, you know, there would be someone down the row with a DS, and they'd be like, you know, do you want to play? And well, maybe not really. I'm down here and trying to convocate. But yeah,
I was going to say bathrooms, but I'll change it to urinals.
Yeah, urinals would be impractical.
Well, it's still a fair game, though.
But people didn't volunteer that as one of the places they don't play. So, obviously, things at a wedding, they're not going to play at a fancy restaurant. So they would play at some restaurant, like they're waiting in line or they're waiting. People would say, yeah, I want to play in class, but then they would immediately follow up with stories about, well, actually, last week, I had my DS, and the guy behind me had a DS, and we created some Pokemons. So they would say it's not really appropriate, but they would still do it anyway. Okay? So now, really, it's not like the situation, or I'm sorry, it's not the physical environment that's restricting where they play. It's social appropriateness, right? Is it socially appropriate to play games in this context? So the one place that they reported that people said it's not appropriate to play that was surprising to us was actually parties. Okay, so here's the reason: if you have a DS, right, but not everyone has a DS, then it's this very socially isolating piece of technology because everyone, you know, has their own DS. They have their own unique view of the world. And they hold it within personal space. So the issue here was that you couldn't easily share the gaming experience with the rest of the people at the party. And you'll see some pictures of this where you'll understand, yeah, this is why this makes complete sense. Okay? So we asked, you know, who do you play with, right? So mostly people play with their friends, family, coworkers, classmates, and so on. You know, the kind of groups that you would expect. Okay. But again, games can happen almost anywhere. So, as I was saying, you know, there are things like basketball pickup games. So, how often does this actually happen in practice? Right? Is seeing a DS an invitation to start a multiplayer game? So, there's again this question of how often do these ad hoc games start up? Well, we found that these were very, very rare. Right? A few people had played with us on the bus. A few people had played these ad hoc games at school. But most of the people didn't have these stories of playing pickup games. Now, what was interesting was that people wanted this. Everyone said that they were open and receptive to someone coming up to them and asking them, hey, do you want to play a multiplayer game, right? But no one wanted to actually be the person to approach the other person to ask would it be okay if we played a game. So, you know, there are a couple barriers. One is just knowing whether people have a DS, right? So, how many people have a DS here right now?
Oh, none of them.
So 1% has a DS here right now, but you don't know that because it's tucked away in his backpack. Okay. So there's this issue of, well, first of all, who has a DS, right? If it's not visible, you know, it's hard to pair up with people, all right? But there's also this problem of knowing what games they play and what their skill level is, right? So that chance encounter I had where I played Mario Kart on the train with this kid and I got completely smeared. Like, after like a race or two, he was like, I'm done, right? He didn't even say that. He just like, the game disconnected and then went on and did something else, right? I was absolutely no challenge for him, so it wasn't any fun. So there's a problem of finding this parity in terms of skill level with people, okay? There's also social barriers, obvious social barriers, right? It's awkward to go and approach someone and be like, hey, you want to play a game, right? And so this was probably one of the largest factors that prevented people from doing these ad hoc pickup games. But there are also some logistical barriers, right? So it takes time to start the games. You have to figure out the settings, you have to agree on the settings, right? So we do Mario Kart, like, you know, what track, what, you know, engine size, and so on. And there's not a lot of flexibility in joining and leaving, right? Typically, you have to join in at one point in the game, again, typically at the start. Okay, so everyone, you have this period where you collect everybody, they all connect, they all work together, to figure out the options, and then gameplay starts. And if one person needs to leave, sometimes the game doesn't handle that elegantly, right? So I was playing Tetris with a group of people, and I lost, and I just closed the DS, and then it just killed the multiplayer game for everyone else, right? Because it didn't elegantly handle this ability to leave at any point in time, right? Similarly with Mario Kart, right? So for starting, to join in, you have to join in at the start. If I approach a group and they're already playing and I want to join in, well, we have to go through the entire configuration process again. So it's not easy to keep these games going and to lead, right? And so people would say, if I were on a bus and I saw someone, I'm not really likely to go up and approach them and ask them to play, partly because they might be getting off the stop or two later, and so it might not be worth the time to actually get the game going. Okay. So there are a number of workarounds to these issues that we found. So there are these DS buttons that you can buy, which indicate the games you have. Put them on your backpack. People would post on websites. So I think this is a Facebook group. I'm at DC Library right now, and I have a Nintendo DS. Right, so this is one way for people to hook up for games. And people would post and say, I'm going to be going to this particular location. Where can I find other people who play DS? I'd like to play against them. Right, so there aren't, because of the flexibility, because a game can happen anywhere, and it just requires having a DS, it actually makes it more difficult for people to pair up. Right, it's not like a basketball court, which is fixed, where you can always go down to the same location and then people can play. Okay. Here you have this flexibility where at any point in time people might have a DS, and so it's difficult to arrange the start of the games. Okay. All right, so why do they play? Well, people, or what really attracted to them? Well, they like local multiplayer. Okay, so you can play on the DS by yourself, you can play with people who are co-located with you, or you can play with people over the internet. Playing with people who are local with you was the preferred mode of playing, right? People didn't really like getting online and playing with other people because it's not the same experience. Okay, so multiplayer games, they preferred having locally. Okay. So what is this game experience like? Well, they'd sit by, there'd be banter, there'd be trash talking about games. I mean, this is one of the reasons why the local multiplayer is valued, right? It's hard to engage with trash talk over the internet, right? You just don't have the bandwidth for it, okay? And so all these features made it very attractive locally. So one of the questions was, okay, so they like playing locally, but how does the feature set actually affect the experience, and how does it compare to console gaming? Well, to give you a sense, this is what gaming looks like when you're playing a console game. Okay, so look at this picture. Okay, lock this in your brain. This is what console gaming is. Now this is what local multiplayer DS gaming is like. See any differences? Yeah.
I see neck problems coming in.
So again, console gaming and DS gaming. Okay. So this starts looking at why it's not seen as socially appropriate to engage in a DS game at a party unless everyone has a DS. Yeah, Sean.
I see in the previous picture, only 2 people actually playing the game and 3 people watching.
Right, exactly. So you only have a few people playing, but spectators are easily accommodated with this particular medium. Okay? So console games you can have. So this is why it works at parties, right? You have just a few people who are playing, but then everyone else can take part by watching, right? And everyone sees the same thing. Everyone hears the same thing. Okay. With the DS, that's not the case. With the DS, everyone has their own unique view of the game world, right? And they're going to be seeing, they're going to be seeing different things. They're going to be hearing different things, okay? But also look at how hunched over people are with the DS, right? This is not inviting third parties to come up and take a look at what's going on with the DS. So it really starts to shut out third parties. So these individual displays are really isolating. So one of the advantages is that it allows more people to play together. Right? It scales up elegantly, right? With like a console game, you have a TV, you split that maybe 4 ways, and then you've maxed out your screen real estate, right? With the DS, you can have 8 people playing simultaneously because you don't have to worry about splitting the screen. Everyone has their own unique view, okay? But what it does prevent is what we call "did you see that" moments, right? So when you're playing with a console, and everyone's looking at the same thing, you're like, oh, did you see that? And like, yeah, I saw it, right? With the DS, it's like, did you see that? I just got whacked with a shell, and you're like, no, I didn't see it, I'm not anywhere near you, right? And so you can't share these, did you see that moment when you're playing on the DS?